Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to LizziefayeLovesBooks. I'm Elizabeth, and this is going to be a short video about my 2020 reading goals. So what it all boils down to is the whole idea of reading one a month. Now, that sounds like that's very doable, but here's what I mean. Okay, so I'm sure we've all done this. You've contemplated joining a new book club or joining a year-long read-along, or maybe starting to read from a reading list, some kind of challenge, and the goal is to just read one a month. And in and of itself, that is so doable that, no one would have a problem with that. But I have like a dozen or more of those things. So I have that times 12. And that's what my reading year really needs to boil down to, because in order to meet the goals that I have for my 20 by 20 challenge, which if you're new to my channel, that's a challenge that I gave myself. It's sort of my version of the Stack the Series challenge, and it includes 20 stacks of different lists or reading projects or series or whatever. And my goal was to get as much of those 20 stacks read in a 3-year period. So I started at the beginning of 2018, and I've given myself to the end of 2020 to get as much of those read as I can. So I'm doing pretty good. I will probably give you a 2019 update, or I don't know, I'll probably break it down a little bit, because I can probably lump all the series together, and separate from that, all the Cozy Mystery series that I'm reading, and a few other of my reading projects. I can probably lump those into individual videos and not take up the time in this one. But this is just kind of going to be my overall main goal. So when I started the 20 by 20 challenge, I was able to incorporate all of my reading challenges that I was currently doing into that. But you guys know me, I had to start some more. So in 2018, I started a TBR jar. And this is a jar, I have two, but the biggest one is nonfiction books that I have it on my shelf that I think I can unhaul after I read them, or I just want to take a second look at them, maybe read a little bit of each one and decide if I can just get rid of it or if I actually want to read it. So in 2018, I pulled out 6 of them. I got those read for November of that year, and I drew out 6 more, and I did not get those read yet. I read 2 of them in November of this past year, and I still have 4 more to go. And it's because I really had a hard time focusing on that project because it's not a part of the 2020 project. So I'll get to these one of these days. But anyway, this is another one of my projects. And again, if I would just read one of those a month, I would eventually knock those out. But let me get to that in a second. So then in 2019, I joined a 3rd book club. I'm already in 2 book clubs from my public library, and I lead one of those. So then some ladies from our church decided to start a book club, not affiliated with church, they just happen to be from my church, that's how I know them. And so that book club is a little more chill. We don't meet at the same time every month or whatever, but still we average about a book a month that we read. And so I have managed to keep up with those. So that adds another book a month to my ever-increasing TBR. And sometimes it's books that I don't necessarily want to read. Occasionally it's a book I've read before, and so that keeps me from having to read it again unless I just don't remember it. Anyway, so you can see I have a lot of reading material on my plate. Just looking behind me, most of the books you can see are my books. A few up here are my husband's, but I have the majority of my books are unread books, because I am able to weed out and get rid of the books that I've already read. A lot of times I keep my favorites, like I've read the Jan Karen books. There are some books on behind me that I have read that I'm keeping because they're favorites. But anyway, I just said all that to say I've got a lot of stuff to read, and I'm 55, so I've probably got enough reading material in my house to keep me in books for the rest of my life. And that's okay. I am not stressed about the amount of books that I have, but I am continually buying books and bringing new books into the house. So the books around here have to stay fluid. I have to continue to weed out in order to keep making room for the ones that I'm bringing in, because buying and shopping for books is really just as big of a hobby of mine as reading books. So let me get to my goals, and then I'll kind of get to my whole one a month deal. Now, for my actual reading goal on Goodreads, I put 150 again, and for the last several years, I've been able to get well above that. I hit 290 this year. I had a secret goal. I mean, last year I had a secret goal to get to 300, but I was 10 short, but that's okay. I'm still really super excited. It's the most I've ever read in 1 year, and I probably will still do a wrap up. I have it written down somewhere, how many were print books and how many were audio and the genres and all of that. So let's just make this video about the goals. So my goals, this is the 3rd year of my 20 by 20 challenge, so I really want to focus on that. And I would like to also read from my TBR jar. I'd like to finish the last 4 from the last draw and be able to draw out some more this year. And I want to be able to keep up with all of my book clubs and the Sunshine State books and Newbery Award winners and all of that. So what it all boils down to is one a month from 14. I think I have 14 different lists. So let me just go through those lists. And by doing this, now I know there's going to be months that I don't get all of this done, but I'm going to base my TBR each month on this list and all of these categories. Actually, I have 16 categories. So that's a minimum of 16 books a month, and a couple of these have 2 books in one category. So I usually do average 20 books a month, but still this many doesn't give me any openings for impulse reads or new readathons that come along or challenges on bingos that don't coincide with what I've already got on my list, you know, that kind of thing. So there will be times when I pull in other books that aren't part of these lists, but if I stay focused and make it my main goal to try to read at least one thing from each of these lists each month, or at least 2/3 of this list, I will go a long way towards finishing many of the stacks on my 20 by 20 challenge. Incidentally, if you'd like to see and hear about the stacks and what's on each of my 20 stacks, I will put a link down below of my last year's video where I went through all the stacks and I talked about what is in each stack, what each stack is called, and go from there. So I'm not going to do that again in this video, but feel free to watch that video if you have time. So I mentioned I have 3 book clubs, so and I have 16 stacks. So the first 3 stacks are book club. I'm going to make those my top priority to get read on time so that I'm able to discuss those books at the book club. Number 1 priority is my mystery book club at the library because I lead that one. And number 2 is the other book club at our library. It's called the Literati Book Club, and we read mostly literary fiction. And then the same for the one that meets outside the library. It's called the Chapter 1 Book Club, and so again, that's 3rd on my list. So now the next few are actually, most of the rest of these are all going to be segments of my stacks. Well, the next one is was a read-along, but these are included in one of my stacks. Last year I joined, actually the last 2 years, I was trying to keep up with the Miss Read-Along, which is hosted by someone on Instagram, and I think her name is Arpita. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know, that's not her handle though. Bag full of books or something like that. I may be completely wrong. Just search hashtag Miss Read Along and you'll find them if you want to do it. Now, I don't know if they're going to do an official read along this year, but I still want to continue reading Miss Read books, and I have set my goal to read 1 Miss Read book per month. Now, it might be from the Fairacre series, it might be from the Thrush Green series, but at least 1 Miss Read book a month. And I am reading one right now called Miss Claire Remembers. Then the other one is Grace Livingston Hill. I said even before I started this project, I wanted to read a Grace Livingston Hill book each month. And literally the last 2 years, I've read 1 in each of the last 2 years. Just 1 in a year. That is not cutting it. So I gotta bump that up, and I love those books. I would like to read at least 1 Newbery winner per month, and I might need to bump that up even more because I really would love to say that I've read all 100 Newbery books by the time they announce the 100th one, which is not this year, but I think next year. It might be 1 more year after that, but it's getting close. It's not that far away. So that's the 6th thing. Then number 7 is my own read-alongs. I need to read at least 1 book from one of my read-alongs. I think I have 2 left right now that are not completed. One of them is really going to center around Christmas books. That's the Cape Light series. But right now we're trying to read all of the first 4 books, which are not necessarily a Christmas theme. And so the other read-along that I've already announced a couple years ago is the Home to Heather Creek series. And I would ideally, actually that is number 15 on the list, is to read at least one Home to Heather Creek series, because I'm also planning to announce a couple of other read-alongs, or at least a choice between 2, and all of those, the ones I'm going to announce as starting this year, I can get on audio. So, you know, that'll be my goal, is to read one of those, you know, at least something from one of my read-alongs at least, and if not all of them each month. That's, you know, that's the bare minimum. Then on my 20 by 20 stack, one of the stacks is the Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I've only read 1 so far, and there's 13, so I need to read 1 each month to finish this year. And I'm also doing the Audible category challenge. Now this one's not difficult because that's audio, and I don't have any problem reading a boatload of audiobooks, or listening to a boatload of audiobooks. So I need to read 2 from the Audible Escape package, and pick 2 categories each month in order to finish that. I should finish that sometime mid-year. But then I noticed there's some other themes, not just categories, but there's story themes and other stuff. I might want to do those too, as long as I'm an Audible subscriber. Then I have a list of 14 Cozy Mysteries series that I'm currently reading. A couple of those I am caught up with, and I would like to read at least 1 from each of the other series by the end of 2020. And then I have some other stacks. So without going into what all those stacks are, I wrote at least 1 book from stack 3, and 2 books from stack 17 or 19, and then 1 book from stack 18 or 8, and 1 book from stack 9. So you'll have to tune in and watch the other video to see what those stacks were. And then the last one is 1 from my TBR jar each month. I usually draw out 6 at a time, so even if I did that, I've still got 4 to read from last year. So at some point, maybe in November, I can kind of catch up with the extra 4 so that I can get 2 full draws done this year. That would be great. So those are my lists. That's what I'm going to pull my TBR from each month. I have not really picked out one for everything for January, although I am already reading. I've already finished several books for January, and I won't have time this weekend to talk about and do another video about what I'm reading for January, but I will do that very soon. We've got a busy week right now and a busy weekend coming up, but I at least wanted to throw this up and let you know kind of what my reading goals are for 2020. I've been enjoying watching all of the other 2020 reading goal videos, and if you have any goals you'd like to share with me of what you're going to be reading this year, I would love that. So in the meantime, have a great day, read a good book, and God bless you.